The Grumman F6F Hellcat, one of the most iconic and successful naval fighter aircraft of the Second World War, represents not only a remarkable feat of American wartime engineering but also a symbol of technological adaptability, combat dominance, and strategic foresight that shifted the balance of power in the Pacific theater. And to truly understand its impact, one must begin with its origin and development, which stemmed directly from the experience of the U.S. Navy with the earlier Grumman F4F Wildcat, an aircraft that, while rugged and reliable, found itself increasingly outclassed by the highly maneuverable and long-range Japanese Mitsubishi A6M0 in the early years of the Pacific War, particularly during the battles of 1941 and 1942 such as Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, Wake Island, Coral Sea, and the crucial carrier duel at Midway. Grumman's design team, led by Chief Engineer William Schwindler and under the leadership of company founder Leroy Grumman, set out to create a fighter that retained the toughness of the Wildcat but overcame its deficiencies in speed, climb, firepower, and ceiling, resulting in the birth of the F6F Hellcat, which first flew on June 26, 1942, and was rushed into production with astonishing speed, entering combat with U.S. Navy squadrons by September 1943, less than 15 months after its prototype flight, a testament to the urgency of wartime innovation. The Hellcat was designed around the powerful Pratt Whitney R-2800 double WASP 18-cylinder radial engine, producing up to 2,000 horsepower, giving the aircraft a top speed of about 380 miles per hour at 23,000 feet, a climb rate of 3,500 feet per minute, and an impressive service ceiling of 37,300 feet, making it not only faster but also better climbing and higher flying than the Zero. While its rugged airframe, thick armor protection, self-sealing fuel tanks, and heavy armament of 6.50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns with up to 400 rounds per gun gave it a devastating punch against both fighters and bombers, plus the ability to carry rockets and bombs for ground attack, thereby making it a true multi-role aircraft. The Hellcat's design philosophy, unlike some high-strung fighters of the war, emphasized forgiving handling, wide landing gear for safe carrier operations, and excellent visibility from its cockpit, which meant that even relatively inexperienced naval aviators, trained rapidly under wartime pressures, could take the F6F into combat and still perform effectively against veteran Japanese pilots, a factor of enormous importance during the rapid expansion of the U.S. Navy's carrier forces in 1943 and 1944. Operationally, the F6F Hellcat debuted during the Solomon Islands campaign but came to prominence in 1943-44 with the fast carrier task forces during raids on the Marshall Islands, the Marianas, and the Philippines, and most famously it played the decisive role in the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, where U.S. Hellcat pilots annihilated Japanese naval aviation in what became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, shooting down an estimated 300 Japanese aircraft in a single day while suffering relatively minimal losses themselves, demonstrating the overwhelming advantage of the Hellcat in terms of speed, firepower, and durability when flown by skilled and aggressive American pilots. Statistically, the Hellcat went on to destroy 5,223 enemy aircraft in the Pacific, accounting for 75% of all aerial victories scored by U.S. Navy pilots, a record unmatched by any other naval aircraft in history, while its overall kill-to-loss ratio stood at an extraordinary 19:1, meaning that for every Hellcat lost in aerial combat, 19 enemy aircraft were destroyed, a figure that reflects both the aircraft's superiority and the increasing disparity between well-trained American aviators and the dwindling, less experienced Japanese replacements of the later war years. Beyond air-to-air combat, the Hellcat was equally effective in ground attack and close air support missions, carrying up to 2,000 pounds of bombs or 6 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets HVARs, which it used extensively during amphibious landings across the Pacific, such as at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, where it pounded Japanese fortifications, supply lines, and troop concentrations, softening resistance for American Marines and soldiers on the ground. Production of the Hellcat was staggering, with 12,275 built between 1942 and 1945, making it the most produced naval fighter of World War II, and its relative simplicity of manufacture, combined with its ruggedness, meant that it could be delivered to the fleet in large numbers without the need for specialized materials or overly complex maintenance procedures, a factor critical to sustaining U.S. naval supremacy. One of the often overlooked strengths of the F6F was its adaptability to technological improvements, such as the integration of the AN/APS-6 radar in the night fighter version F6F-5N, which allowed Navy and Marine Corps pilots to intercept Japanese aircraft in darkness or poor visibility, further eroding Japan's ability to mount surprise night raids against against U.S. forces, while specialized reconnaissance versions and photo recon aircraft also contributed to intelligence gathering. The Hellcat's combat career extended beyond the Pacific War as well, as it was used post-war by the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps into the late 1940s and even into the early 1950s in training and reserve roles, while export versions served with countries such as France, which used Hellcats in its early conflicts in Indochina, and Britain's Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm, which employed the type in European and Pacific operations under the designation Hellcat Mki and Mk2, further highlighting its international impact. Pilots who flew the Hellcat frequently praised its sturdiness, reliability, and ability to bring them home despite heavy damage, with stories of F-6Fs returning to carriers with large portions of wings missing, riddled with bullet holes, or with landing gear damaged, underscoring its reputation as a pilot's airplane, in contrast to the more temperamental but faster VOD F4U Corsair, which although superior in some performance metrics, faced difficulties with carrier landings in its early versions, leaving the Hellcat to serve as the Navy's workhorse until the Corsair was more fully refined. In terms of strategic effect, the Hellcat was indispensable to the island-hopping campaign, as its range of 1,090 miles allowed U.S. carriers to project air power deep into enemy territory, covering invasions, escorting bombers, sweeping Japanese skies clear of opposition, and establishing air superiority as a prerequisite for amphibious operations, which meant that by late 1944, Japan's once formidable naval air arm was largely destroyed and incapable of meaningful resistance, due in no small part to the relentless dominance of Hellcat-equipped carrier air groups. The aircraft's production cost was also relatively low compared to its combat effectiveness, estimated at about $35,000 per unit during the war, making it one of the most cost-effective fighters of the conflict, especially considering the high attrition rates expected in carrier warfare. The Hellcat also became a key training platform for developing future naval aviation doctrine, as the U.S. Navy expanded massively during the war, and thousands of young aviators had their first combat experiences in the type, learning lessons of air combat tactics, carrier coordination, and combined arms operations that would later shape Cold War naval aviation. Despite being overshadowed in post-war public memory by the Corsair, which enjoyed a long career including service in Korea, and the sleek P-51 Mustang, whose glamour was enhanced by its European theater fame, the F-6F Hellcat remains statistically the most successful naval fighter of World War II, not only because of its impressive kill count but because it was available in the right numbers at the right time with the right blend of performance and reliability to decisively shift the balance of the Pacific War. Its legacy is one of unsung heroism, industrial might, and operational excellence, and to this day aviation historians consider it a textbook example of how a seemingly conservative, rugged, and pragmatic design can outperform more flamboyant aircraft when mass-produced, properly supported, and flown in large-scale, coordinated operations, and in museums, airshows, and commemorations. The F-6F Hellcat stands as a tribute not only to the engineers and workers who built it but to the thousands of naval aviators who trusted their lives to it and used it to secure victory across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean in the climactic years of the Second World War.